Right, hello, welcome. So here we are on our first experience series of our web chats here at GPM. And we've been getting from the world of offline to online and creating a new host of experiences. So it's an interesting time for us all. And something that we've been working on over the last few weeks is this interesting and challenging world comes across as it does, I guess. So last week we were doing cooking lessons with Aldo Zilli for one of our corporate clients, cooking along. And now we're finding other ways to engage employees and find fun and exciting ways to do things online these days. So today I've got a polar explorer with us and someone who I was fortunate enough to meet down in Antarctica many years ago. So Inge Solheim, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege and a pleasure, and of course a very nice break from all things Corona. And I think that it's a great idea to do these things, and I'm very happy that you invited me in.
Well, so yeah, we want to get out of our world and be thinking more about what you're used to in your day-to-day, I guess, and hopefully something that we'll all be doing in the future. But equally, you'll probably be able to give us a few insights into how you manage the loneliness, the unique situations that you're in that often create very challenging times that we're all kind of dealing with in this strange way right now. But so just give us a brief insight into your career.
I think I have a very fortunate situation. I get to go on amazing adventures all over the world, and I meet incredible people in the natural surroundings with animals in their natural habitat. And my job is my dream job. So if I was 25 years ago was going to invent my dream job, it would be what I'm doing right now. And of course, even these challenging times with the Corona lockdowns, I have the fortunate, the privilege of being able to go outdoors and enjoy nature. And today I just finished, like 2 hours ago, I finished a long ski trip up in the mountains. And Norway is great for that because we have lots of space and social distancing is quite easy here. And very relaxed, and because of our early response to the crisis, we are now seeing a really good development and good statistics here. So life is coming back slowly and good, and I hope that you guys will see the same soon, and things will be back to not normal necessarily, but maybe same but different.
I'm sure they will be. I mean, you started life as an office job. You were in banking. Like, did something happen one day where was there a point where you kind of went, I need to be that guy that goes to the North Pole? Or was there this turning point or this big challenge that you were like, I'm going to go and do this, and your life changed from being what I guess most people listening in now just used to having the office job? And how do you end up doing this career? When did it change?
I grew up in the mountains of Norway, and exploring and adventuring was my normal. That was the way I grew up. And then when I was in my 20s, I conformed and went into an office job where I was in finance for 8-9 years. And that was me outside of my comfort zone, but because I wanted to have a career and make a lot of money and do what other people thought was both prestigious and nice to do, I went into finance, and I managed to stay there for 8-9 years until I had too much and needed to go back to my roots. And I started guiding 21 years ago. I started guiding again in the mountains, and guiding in the Arctic and the North Pole in 1999. And since then, I have been fortunate enough to guide 20 trips to the North Pole, lots of trips in Antarctica, Greenland, Iceland, lots of cold places, but also oceans and deserts and mountains. So it's been an amazing journey for me. And it looked really stupid in the beginning because I wasn't making money. Back when you met me in Antarctica, I was not a well-paid guide, and I took all the crazy jobs that I could to accumulate experience. And if you ask my bank manager at the time, he was thinking that I was stupid because I left this really well-paid job in finance to go back into like almost living like a ski bum. So it didn't look very smart in the beginning. But now I have had some really cool jobs, and in the world of expeditions and guiding, I get some prestigious and nice jobs. So I'm very fortunate now.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think we'll cover some of your amazing trips, and of course, you've worked across lots of TV shows and taking Prince Harry to the North Pole. You've done lots of things with celebrities, charities, and much more. But and also, just to let people know, we're going to have a Q&A, so please do have a look at the Q&A box and just write some questions in. And I'll try and make sure we answer some of those as we go along.
That would be cool, because I like that dynamic form of talking about things that people are thinking about, and the questions they have. It makes it more interesting for me as well. Usually I would be showing a lot of slides and videos about what I do and have those pictures running in the background. But this format, I could do that now as well, but it's this format of a dynamic conversation with you is quite exciting for me. And if people are interested, they could look up the CNN documentary or Harry's Arctic Heroes or the South Pole trip we did with Walking with the Wounded. And there's lots of cool stuff online if people are inspired by our conversation after.
Yeah, great. And I'll be sending those links around to people as well. I mean, so you're talking about how you got into this, but I mean, is your job risky? Like, what situation have you been in that you felt you're most at risk on an adventure when you've gone, things aren't quite as they should be? I mean, it's a challenging thing.
I've had a lifelong interest in risk and risk management. So I think I have a different view of risk than most people. I try to stay fact-oriented, unemotional about it, and calculate the risk and mitigate the risk is my interest. And I'm getting quite good at it, I think. And different jobs, different backgrounds that I've had and capacities, it's been challenging, and it's forced me to respond to what's really happening, prepare well, and leave emotions and fear out of it. So when I'm in a situation in my job or anywhere else, I look at all the potential risks that are visible or obvious to me, and then I try to mitigate them. And I try to prepare so well that I have a buffer of capacity, emotional, mental, physical capacity to deal with and handle the asymmetric risk that sometimes occur, the things you couldn't prepare for or couldn't foresee. I don't think my job is more risky than anyone else's. I think, for example, I know you well, Johnny. I think you take more risk in your days than I do in my job. I think an average housewife takes more risk than me because of all that unconscious risk that people are taking every day. I don't think I take a lot of unconscious risk. I'm interested in it, curious, and quite competent in risk management and calculations. So as an example, a lot of people, and especially mothers, they argue that I take a lot of risk in my job or in my spare time with my leisure activities. But I think that a mother or a father who texting and driving, yelling at their children in the backseat while they're commuting to work or something like that, that's the asymmetric risk. That's the unconscious risk that people are taking every day without knowing it. When I make a risk assessment for a TV production, or if I work in close protection and make risk assessments, it is very calculated what we do, and we try to distill and find out what the real risks are and prepare for them. When
I think that you're very pragmatic in everything you do, and I think that from my experience, I remember going over a glacier field with you at some point, and I'm like, "Is this risky?" And you're like, "I've done this 10 times. Not, only once someone's fallen in," and you're just like, so. I mean, when that you've got that pragmatic day, you took taking Harry to the pole or going to the North Pole on an average day. What's your day look like when you wake up in the tent in the morning? You give us an insight into how your day pans out.
Every trip is different. A TV production is all about making sure that people have what they need to have, and they are prepared for all the potential risks or hazards, or I train them well so that everyone's prepared. So every trip and every TV project, every adventure is different. But a typical day is waking up in the morning, making food, making sure that everything is packed and ready for the day.
I must point out, when you say the morning, that doesn't really have much reference in the polar regions, does it?
It does, because we choose a time zone and we stick to it. Usually we choose a time zone that is practical, because all time zones meet on the poles. So we could, and the sun is up half the year. So usually we just choose a time zone that is practical for communication with our home base. So when I'm on the North Pole, I usually use Norwegian time. When I'm in Antarctica, I usually use South African or English time. And then, so that's quite easy. Having good routines is key, because your body and your mind falls into routines. So I eat eat very regularly. If I'm moving in physical activity, I eat every 2 hours. So the body and my mind works like a clock. And of course, if things need to change, you have the capacity to change that routine. But I think routine and tidiness and order and discipline is extremely important to stay fit and to stay ready and to stay safe.
So are you getting on these trips, do you have a full night's sleep, or how are these challenges usually working out for you? And
sometimes I have plenty of sleep and rest, and other times, especially when we're racing and pushing the limits, we sometimes go 20 hours, we go 24 hours without any sleep, and we rotate, because we can choose what time we want it to be. We can make 36-hour days if we want to, and that gives us the ability to work for 20 hours and then sleep and rest and prepare. It's just different. Every trip is different, but I'm much more comfortable than people think I am on my expeditions. And I say when I hear talks and interviews with other explorers, and especially the English ones, I hear about all the suffering and the frostbites and all that stuff. My response is that if you're suffering so much, and if you're constantly in danger and in survival mode, you're doing something wrong. You haven't prepared well enough.
I mean, I seem to remember the first night up in the mountains in Antarctica, and I remember going to bed that night and sleeping in my what was classified as a -40 sleeping bag, and like putting my head inside the sleeping bag to try and keep warm, and waking up in the middle of the night with ice formed inside my sleeping bag from my breath, and thinking how difficult this was to sleep there. Yet I come out and find that you've got bored, left your tent, walked out, dug a hole, and slept in a hole for the night.
That was nice. It's more quiet, and I think my mind is spoiled because I get all this time away from the matrix and the noise. So I really appreciate quietness and calm, and I sleep well in the cold as well. So I'm acclimatized, so my base metabolism keeps me warm usually. And also, if you ever dug a hole in the snow and slept there, you know it's super quiet. Nobody's snoring. Yeah, it's really, really nice.
So, I mean, your challenges, and I mean, also another question that I'm intrigued on is, which is the best pole, the north or the south? And of course, you get to the north, and I think for the people that don't know, there's obviously nothing there because it's a moving sheet of ice. But so, what's this sense of achievement when you realize your goal, and how does that feel and manifest itself?
I think everyone listening in tonight, I think, has examples where they have worked hard, prepared for a long time, worked hard, maybe been scared, hungry, tired, and then reached their goal, and it feels amazing. And that's what the North and South Pole or the mountaintops, they are just symbols of hardship. They're not the important goals in themselves, but because they're hard to reach, the journey and the goal feels so good. So I have to admit that I've cried on the North Pole and the South Pole just from the pure feeling of joy and also achieving something together with a group of people. It feels amazing. And of course, I'm a softie, so when other people tear up, I do that as well.
So I guess that leads me on to what is this? Is what you do a physical challenge or a mental challenge? Where does that really sit?
I think most things in life are both. So I know that a lot of people are having bigger challenges that I have on my job or on an expedition every day. So I think we have to lose this, even if it pays my bills and sponsors like Breitling and other companies wants to sponsor me because I have this strange job. I have to tone it down a little bit. I think a lot of people every day and sometimes are much more challenged than I am in my job. So I guess that. Yeah, I forgot what you asked, but anyway.
Is it a mental or a physical challenge?
Oh, yeah, so what I was going to say is that my
physical, can you do it without the mental? And how hard, like, can a normal able-bodied person achieve some of these goals? And is it really about the mindset? And
yes,
what mindset is that?
It is all about the mindset and doing what it takes. If you really want something and you work hard and you prepare well, anything is possible. And my good friend, who's also a polar explorer, Alin Kagge, he was the first to reach the North Pole, South Pole, and the Mount Everest. And he said, the North Pole is 90% a mental challenge and 60% a physical challenge. And that tells you that, first of all, it's a really difficult mental challenge, but it also tells you that you need 150%. So your normal modus operandi of giving just enough isn't good enough. You have to do what it takes, and you have to stretch yourself and push yourself beyond what you thought was possible before. And for everyone who does this for the first time, it opens up a door to a new world where you feel invincible afterwards, and you get this sense of achievement. You don't have to go to the North Pole. The North Pole and South Pole or Himalayas are just symbols of it. Other people can decide to learn how to play a guitar, or it could be something emotional that they want to achieve. It could be building up and starting up their own company. That will be their Mount Everest. And so my arena is just strange, weird place that is easy to understand. And it's a very clear symbol, but other people have their own goals.
I mean, you mentioned that, and I think that there's you've worked with a lot of disabled people as well. I know on some incredible challenges, and ones that I've been fortunate enough to meet through some of our work with Wings for Life. And one guy, in fact, who was blind, who then, because he was blind, fell out of a window and then became disabled as well. So blind and disabled. And I know that you work with him, but do you think that those people that you've worked with, and if you can tell us a little bit about some of those trips that you've done with them, but do you think that they have stronger mental willpower than an able-bodied person, and even more ability to do these challenges?
I think the great awakening for me when I started working with so-called disabled people was, first of all, not to see them as a group, they are individuals like all of us, and you can't say that all English people are like this or all people from London are like that. And the same way as you can't say that all so-called disabled people or blind people have these challenges, because they deal with it in a very different way. And I was fortunate to meet Mark Pollock, you mentioned here, who was blind. And he was the first blind person to reach the South Pole. And it was my job to prepare him. And that was on a race with Ben Fogle, James Cracknell, and a lot of other people who it was televised. And Mark Pollock reached the South Pole. He celebrated that with flying a flag with 200 people that had been there for him. He celebrated his friends and family and people that had been important to him in his life. He went on from the South Pole to sail around Britain, and then he was invited to the Henley Regatta, and that year was really warm, so all windows were left open during the night, and he walked in the night, and he followed the wall around the building or around the room, and he by accident fell out of the window. He broke his back and he got paralyzed from the belly button and down. It was very critical for months in hospital with the traumas and also the infections afterwards. So he barely survived. After recovering, he has dedicated his life to inspiring other people. And of course, he was always inspirational, had his radio show and did interviews and talks and stuff. But he also started working very hard to help the Christopher Reeve Foundation to cure paralysis and also to develop exoskeletons for paralyzed people. An incredibly inspirational guy. And of course, that's the guy you should have here on the next show. So him and other people that I worked with in all of these expeditions to North Pole, South Pole, up mountains, or TV productions like Beyond Boundaries, they have taught me so much about the human potential. And I guess that some people, when they meet resistance, physical or mental resistance in their life, they react by capitulating. Is that a word? Yeah, in English as well as Norwegian. And other people find some strength inside to overcome the challenge or find ways around it to compensate or work around their disabilities or challenges. That could be mental injuries. It could be other things that hold you back. And what I've seen is that some people find it in themselves. Some people get good help and support from people around them and find a way to come back and come up bigger and better than they were before. And that's, for me, amazing to watch. And it also puts my life in perspective and my so-called achievements in perspective. They are quite small compared to these people. So it's been a really beautiful journey, and they are the most important expeditions and projects for me.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear about those and how you've supported them. It seems that you have a career helping other people achieve their challenges in life and make them. But
I think that's the most rewarding part of my job, to help other people achieve things, and of course, through that, I get my reward as well. And the interesting thing is that because our projects like Walking with the Wounded or Beyond Boundaries are televised, it gets attention. But you know, every day people are doing this for family members, or they work in NHS or in private organizations or other places, or they just do unpaid job helping people like I do sometimes. They do it every day, and they should be recognized for that, much more so than a spoiled, rotten Norwegian guy who gets to go on adventures. You know, that's it's more important. And I think the crisis that we're in now will actually, not for everyone, but some people will actually start to notice those everyday achievements, those everyday heroes around us, and maybe stop celebrating celebrities and overpaid football players, and really acknowledge the neighbor, the nurse, like everyday heroes that do extraordinary things for other people, usually very low paid.
Yeah. I mean, I know that you love kind of being behind the scenes a little bit, and of course, being the one that helps people fulfill these challenges. But I'm here to talk about you. So, like, I'd love to know what's your next personal challenge in terms of an adventure? Like, what's on your list to achieve? And
I have a few projects and things that I want to achieve. I have a personal expedition that I'm preparing for mentally and physically because of this current crisis and because of a geopolitical issue last year. It's been postponed, but I still have my eyes on a big hairy goal that I want to communicate to people soon, and that is basically an ego trip. And the best thing I can hope for is that it inspires other people. Apart from that, I'm not going to cure cancer or change the world with my expedition. And every expedition or explorer that tries to invent crazy records or do stuff, yeah, we're spoiled rotten. Don't big it up. Yeah.
So looking kind of onto how this relates to people in their daily lives, I guess. But I mean, you're a one-man walking crisis management team. Like when you've got situations at hand that are really life-threatening. Can you give us a insight into a trip where things haven't quite gone as planned and how you've managed it?
Yes, there are several times, and especially when you're working in extreme environments, there are things that are happening that you didn't plan for. It could be physical things or medical things happening with people. It could be weather that is changing fast or unexpected extreme weather. Other times it can be accidents, and you have to. So my goal is to prepare people that are with me on the expedition to own the expedition themselves and to be well prepared mentally and physically for it. So I push people really hard before the expeditions. And when I was a kid, or when I was younger, I was skiing in the mountains with some Royal Marines soldiers, and they were training in Norway, and I was fortunate to train with them. And one of them told me about the 7 Ps, and that's been with me forever since then. Proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. And I live by that, and I try to prepare mentally and physically for challenges. There have been incidents that have been life-threatening and scary in the moment, but because my focus is on solving the problems and doing the job and getting the thing fixed, I don't really dwell on the risk or the problem in the moment. I analyze it and debrief it and digest it afterwards. But there and then, I try to use my techniques and also partly my personality that has this problem solving, I guess, side to it, where I try to be here and now, get an overview of the situation, stay fact oriented, breathe, try to be curious about people's reactions and my own reaction, because if I can activate my executive mindset, if I can stay curious and stay calculating, I cannot fall into what's called a reactive mindset, where you have fight, flight, and freeze. So I'm forcing myself through techniques to stay here and now and to respond to what's really happening instead of what I fear or what I want to happen. And that's a technique in the beginning. And when you do it with positive results again and again, it becomes your personality.
Yeah, I like that phrase you use, fact orientated. In a crisis situation, often I think emotions can take over. So
yeah, this old bull, young bull kind of thing, and an old police officer who walks into a crime scene, and the young police officer who runs into it. And it's the same principle of being calm. Calm is a superpower, and being calm and collected and present here and now in a crisis. It is the same technique you should apply if you're in a very difficult conversation, an argument. If you're first to an accident, a car accident, any crisis can be handled that way. And the funny thing about our brain is that it can only have one process going at the time. And if you force your brain to be calculating, analytical, balance here and now, fact collecting, it doesn't fall into those reactive mindsets. And there's a very important difference between reacting and responding to a situation. Yeah. If you're responding, you are doing something that is relevant and right for the situation as it is, not as it was once before or all the time before, or what you feared or what you wanted it to be. And it's my job as a leader, but I think that there's a lot of other people in different, like people listening in now who have similar. I'm putting some words on something that a lot of people would recognize from their job, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've never known one for you. I don't think fear is something that regularly comes past you, but like going on to loneliness, what I guess people are at now, like, yeah. Give us an idea of how remote you've been on these trips and the periods of time that you've been on your own.
Some expeditions are with people, and a lot of people, or like 10, 15, some TV projects are with 50 people. And some expeditions I'm alone. I think the longest isolation I've had from what I call the matrix is 3 months. No contact with the outside world, and no news, no music, no noise. And music is not noise, but none of the things that we think are important. I have been isolated for 3 months, and it's also my best expedition ever. It's not, it's not the most important, but it's the one that was most, I guess, it was an important expedition for my own development. And accepting the situation, I think loneliness is a thing that we can all feel sometimes, and we can feel lonely in a group of people, or we can feel lonely alone somewhere on a desert island or something. But I think that's how you deal with your situation and how you see this loneliness. I think the worst thing is to be lonely with a lot of people around you. To be lonely alone is actually a beautiful thing. It's just when there's no noise, nobody wants your attention, nobody wants to distract you. So it gives your brain resonance. So your thoughts can go from A to C without disruption, and it's a luxury. And people who have understood this, they go on silent retreats. They have meditation practices where they try to mimic this with the repetition, deprivation of the senses and things like that. I'm getting this for free in my job, going to these remote places. And I think it's a huge privilege. Feel very fortunate. And when you get to think a chain of thoughts or an emotion through from without disruption, it becomes so much more clear. So it's a journey of discovery into yourself and your own emotions. And I think I've had a few of those experiences, and every time there's a lot of noise around me, I'm longing back to that. And I usually, if I can, I retract and go to a quiet place, because I think as human beings, we're bombarded with too much noise and commercial impressions and things like that. And it's not healthy for us.
Well, I guess you get a lot of time on your own and away from this chaos that we're in every day. I know I've got quite a few Q&As coming through, which I've just got one more question myself, and then we'll head on to those. But so yeah, you talk about this, the loneliness and the challenge that presents, but also you've got this situation. Have you had conflict in a trip? Like, obviously you're with a group of people that you might not see other human beings for 3 months at a time, but the 3, 4, 5 of you have got to deal with each other, sleep in the same tent, have arguments, and still carry on as a team that's risking each other's lives together. So when's there been a conflict? What's happened and why, and how's that been resolved?
I think in these situations, it's like a little microcosmos where things get very exaggerated because of the intensity, the risk, and the hardship. But it's very similar to how a family has to deal with their sort of group dynamics, very similar to a workplace. I think if you want to reach something extraordinary together with other people, one thing is to agree on where you want to go, and then look at everyone's resources and who are in the team and how they, as individuals, can put all their energy, all their skills and insight into the project, and then agree on a few rules of engagement, rules on how to communicate. And sometimes when things are going smooth, people are doing that, and it's a well-oiled machinery. And then sometimes I sense that the group is falling apart, usually when there's a disruption in the harmony and maybe hardship or fear. And then my job is to bring people back to center, to calm a situation down, and try to leave my own ego and emotions out of it, and just be a support and remind people of why we're doing this, why the rules that we agreed on beforehand, and also maybe sometimes accept the differences and just put them in a place where we can deal with them later. I
guess the top of the mountain is not always the best place to deal with it. So
not always, but I think people have similar dynamics and similar challenges in their everyday life, in the workplace or in the families, and you can't really have very strict rules or strategies on how to deal with things. You have to be a human being. You have to try and know each other and understand each other as good as possible, and respect each other's differences. Not always easy when there are emotions or fear or hunger or something involved. But when things are extreme, you also potentially can bring out the best in other people, and I like that, the potential for greatness and things like that.
Well, thanks so much for giving us some of your insights into this and in this interesting time. I know that we've got a few questions now, and guys, please do send in any more. So one of the ones, do you have contact with the outside world when you're on an expedition?
Yeah, sometimes we do have contact, and most expeditions we do have some contact, but I think part of the privilege and part of the beauty of being out in the natural world, reconnecting with nature, because we are nature. I think disconnecting from news and from conversations or troubles around the world, I think that's part of the reason why we do these things. And so I try to limit the contact to practical messages and scheduled calls. And
assuming this is on your sat phone that you're keeping you to, and the emergency beacons.
I have sat phones with me all the time, even when I'm traveling to very civilized places, because it's just, it's a habit. I also have an emergency beacon on my hand. Now I bring it with me because I'm up in the mountains every day. And it's just would be embarrassing if I I fell into a crevasse or down from a mountain and I didn't use it.
So how many calories do you need to eat a day on an expedition, and how do you ration out your food pack for enough stuff for however long you're going for?
It's very different from expedition to expedition. Some trips are really hard, and we carry a lot of weight and work very long hours. So my calorie consumption on the most extreme expeditions is 8 to 10,000 calories a day. And it's a great opportunity to lose weight. But if you don't eat enough and if you don't eat the right food, you will get weak and get inflammations and infections in your body. So we're very conscious about the composition of our food. And I try to prepare my body to absorb as much energy as possible through my food. So I think on a good expedition, when I fall into a good rhythm, I can consume 6,500 calories a day. So I have a deficit every day, so I'm losing weight. Wow. And some of that weight is burning fat, and I think 30% is lost in muscle mass. So my body is completely changed after an expedition. But I'm getting better. My body is getting better at dealing with these things. And also, my insight into food and food composition and antioxidants and the right nutrients is making my food much more efficient now than it was 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And then, of course, when you're up at the North Pole, so how do you protect yourself from wildlife like polar bears?
One thing is to be prepared for it, train. I always bring at least one rifle, sometimes a handgun, and flares, and I could shoot warning shots, but most of the time you can fend off a polar bear with loud noises, because for polar bears who are used to the quietness up there and the Zen existence, they think it's really uncomfortable to meet human beings that are making a lot of noise.
Have you come across polar bears whilst you've been on your trip?
Yeah, lots of polar bears, especially in the Arctic, in Svalbard and the Arctic in Norway. But polar bears are usually not aggressive, but sometimes they're hungry and they would start hunting you. So my job is to look out for them, tell other people to look out for them, and remind them of the danger of polar bears. But polar bears is less of a risk than people think if you're well prepared. And of course, I would shoot warning shots before I shoot a polar bear. And at a TV production I did a few years ago, one of the presenters asked me, like, how close should he let the polar bear come before he shoots it? And I said, very close, and almost as a joke, but partly true as well. You need to have scratch marks before you shoot a polar bear, because we are visitors in their habitat. We should be respectful when we're venturing in there, and we should do everything in our power to keep them safe as well as ourselves.
Yeah, very good point. A fun question here. So, if you could only meet one person and why, would it be Sir Ernest Shackleton, Edmund Hillary, or Meghan Markle?
Meeting them or bringing them on an expedition?
Who would you most like to meet and why?
Which ones?
Ernest Shackleton,
Yeah.
Edmund Hillary, or Meghan Markle?
Yeah, so a little while back I met, a little while back I was visiting the Royal Geographical Society because I'm a fellow there, and we went through the archives, and I got to look through all the artifacts of Hillary and Tenzing and Shackleton and all of these things. I was holding like magic items in my hand with amazing history. I have been holding Hillary's shoe and this watch, and so I've met Meghan Markle, impressive and accomplished and amazing person. So I guess I would have to choose one of the other two. I was lucky to go with Meghan and Harry on a trip in Norway and lots of other places around the world. So Shackleton would be interesting because his leadership skills and his ability to motivate and remotivate his crew in a crisis, it's extremely impressive. And where he sometimes failed the expedition, he succeeded his leadership, and he managed to stay true to ethical and human principles of taking care of each other. And I am very impressed. I loved reading about him in the book called Endurance, and I've loved studying his the people's diaries and looking at their journeys from Elephant Island to South Georgia. It's just really impressive stories, and these are the stories I grew up with. But also, in the capacity of my job, I've been able to get access to people who were there, who experienced these things, and yeah, they're just amazing stories.
So last couple of questions then. You've had an amazing career so far and have done lots of incredible things, but do you have any regrets professionally, or do you wish that you'd done anything differently?
Lots. But I don't dwell on that. I try to do better next time and make other choices that are better, because we can't really live in the past. We can't change the past. If we can learn from it, we can take the good parts with us. And I think very early in my life, I learned to live here and now. And I have regrets. I've done stupid things in my life, and I've made poor choices, but I can't really. I could give examples, but I don't think it wouldn't be valuable for anyone else. I have gone through them. I've beaten myself up about some of these choices and priorities sometimes. I guess that as human beings, we are on a journey, and I hope that the next 47 years are as exciting and interesting and challenging as the first 47 years.
And last question then. Can you tell us something about the expedition that didn't go ahead last time, like some insights into that?
Yeah, so one of the most difficult things to do, one of the most difficult things about expeditions is that sometimes the logistics are costing a lot of money. So sometimes the biggest challenge is actually getting to the starting point, finding sponsors that are, in my case, willing to sponsor an expedition that is not blown out of proportions or sold in as changing the world, but just getting companies with relevant products or relevant values to connect and do these partnerships, because some of the expeditions have big budgets. So a lot of meetings, a lot of coincidences lead to you get money, you don't get money. So that's the first hurdle. The first obstacle is to get the funding for the expedition. Some people have really good contacts in the corporate world because they spend a lot of time working on that. Some people have good agents. Sometimes an expedition is easily sold and other times it's impossible. So the first hurdle, when I had the money for this big hairy expedition that I'm planning, I didn't get a permit to enter the area of my starting point because of conflicts between Russia and the rest of the world, where they closed down an area to counter a NATO exercise that was happening in northern Norway. They mounted the biggest exercise ever in that area where I was planning to venture out from. So I didn't get the permit to enter that area. And that was actually quite lucky, because that year, other circumstances, also geopolitical, led to the logistics operation that was going to extract me from the North Pole didn't get approved and didn't go ahead as well. So I was quite lucky. It was fortunate that it didn't go ahead. And then this year, of course, my North Pole solo or North Pole expedition with clients didn't go ahead because of the lockdown or restrictions regarding coronavirus.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess yeah, you go through certainly some challenging expeditions and some
But
interesting.
it also makes the whole thing much more rewarding when you finally one day get to do what you planned. And sometimes you succeed and other times you don't. I've been fortunate to reach a lot of my goals, but I have bigger, hairier goals, and they're not always physical. Some of them are personal, some of them are skills that I want to learn. I still want to learn how to play guitar. I just never, probably never focused enough on it. And there are other things that I want to learn.
On your next trip, I'm sure you have enough time.
Yeah, I guess so. It doesn't weigh much. How much? Yeah. If I bring an old-fashioned guitar, not an electric one, it could be quite nice, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Inge, thank you so much. I mean, I know that hopefully we'll be doing some talks with you, with some of our corporate clients, and telling them about leadership in these difficult.
When are you guys coming to the Arctic with me?
Sure.
We've been together in Antarctica. Now we need to explore the Arctic together. We also went to see the wolves in northern Norway a long time ago, the Northern Lights.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of clients going up to see the wolves now. So, and it's something that certainly we'll plan some bigger expeditions with some of our clients. I know we've been talking about some great ideas with driving across Antarctica and then doing the last degree to the North Pole. So if anyone wants to find out any more about those crazy adventures and joining us on some of those, then please drop us a line.
Yes, yesterday I invited you to a road trip in Norway to see the fjords and everything. So yeah, come on.
Absolutely, I will do. Well, again, thank you, Inge. Thanks everyone for joining, and look forward to seeing you on our next chat soon. And Inge, hopefully when the world comes out of lockdown, I'll be on another adventure with you.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.